Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Bhutan Q&A. My name is Rami, and I'm team leader on this trip. We're just getting started, so people are starting to come into the room, and that's fine. Just for those of us who are doing this for the first time and joining in, just please keep your microphones and your screen cameras off. And as we're going through the briefing, you can just drop your questions into the chat room and we'll be delighted to attend to them one by one. But before we get started, just a quick one. Well, the way that we're going to run this is we're going to start with a briefing about the trip. So you get an overview of everything, and then we'll start going through your questions and hopefully answer that. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. And as people are joining, I'm sure they'll be able to catch up with what we're doing. Okay, so Bhutan. Bhutan is one of our, I don't even know how to describe it. I would say it's the adventure holiday. Bhutan is in the Himalayas. It's the world's only Buddhist kingdom, and it's completely fortified by the Himalayan mountains, and it's landlocked. It borders only China to the north and India to the south. But our trip also includes a feature in Nepal, and that's where we actually get started. So I'm going to jump straight into our little trip briefing here and go through it all. Right, so Bhutan, that's of course the epic tiger's nest and one of the highlights of our trips. The thing about Bhutan is that it really is a living, breathing place. The way that religion occurs in this country isn't something that's just for show. It's actually the way that people live, and it's quite a spectacular thing to see, which can be a little bit different from some of the places that we've otherwise visited, which have kind of turned into these tourist attractions that are just kind of done so that we can see them, as opposed to just how they're normally happening in the world. So day one starts in Nepal, of course, and that's our meeting point. So we actually pick you guys up from the airport in Kathmandu, and from there it's on us. So day one is usually a city tour of Kathmandu, which is an epic place unto itself. It's a stark contrast to Bhutan, where Bhutan is very serene and very quiet. Nepal is quite loud and quite chaotic, but in a very attractive way. So we're going to have the opportunity to kind of contrast the two of them together. For those of us who are arriving early, we're going to have the chance to have a city tour, and you'll get to see the big Buddha, or the Buddhanath Stupa, among other really beautiful attractions like the Dubar Square as well, and Kumari, the living goddess. But depending on what time you arrive, we'll just shuttle you to the rest of the group to catch the city tour. And then after that, in the evening, we have a team dinner all together, which is a really nice cultural dinner and a briefing to let you know how things are going to go the following day. The next morning, we wake up, and it's actually an early start in Kathmandu. We catch an international flight, and this is part of the package as well, so this is on us, from Kathmandu to Paro, which is where the airport is located, the International Airport of Bhutan is located. It's a 1-hour flight, so it's very short, but it's a spectacular flight and the entire time you're going to be glued to the window of the plane, because you're going to be flying over Everest, Lhotse, Nutsi, Makalu, Katranjunga. If you don't know what I'm talking about, these are all gigantic 8,000 and 7,000 meter mountains. And when you look out of the airplane, feels like it's on the same level as the plane. And we'll get to see that both going and coming back. And so when we arrive in Paro, the first stop is to go to Timbu, which is where we're going to be spending our first night. And the road from Paro to Timbu by itself is actually quite something. And we stop along the way just because there are these little mini treks and some beautiful temples that we want to visit along the way as well. And this is just a shot of one such temple, which is just on the roadside. It's a beautiful little trek that we do just to kind of get started and get a feel for where we are, and kind of really appreciate the natural beauty that is that is the environment in Bhutan. It's really quite something that is super special. Like I said, this is right on the side of the road. We haven't even gotten into the trekking yet. But the first day, what we're going to do is so once we've seen some of these sites just along the roadside, we're going to go to Thimbu, have lunch, and then we're going to do our first major trek of the experience. And that is that we're going to be trekking from the town up to the world's biggest golden Buddha statue, which you see right over here. And it's quite something. So we'll be doing a circuit where we trek up to the Buddha, and then we can go inside the temple. Of course, no photography is allowed inside the temples. That's why we can't show you anything. But we'll be able to go inside. Sometimes there are ceremonies taking place, which are quite something to quite a spectacle to watch. Or sometimes we're unlucky with that, and we get to just walk around as well, and that's also something. And then we continue our trek back down to our accommodation in Thimbu, where we have dinner. In Nepal, in Bhutan, throughout this trip, we're going to be staying in quite a comfortable accommodation. So we're going to be staying in a hotel every single night, and you don't need to have a duffel bag or any kind of or any like a bag that needs to move with a porter. You can have your luggage, and that'll just go into the van, and then it'll go with us to the next spot. So we'll be spending the night in Thimbu. Next morning, we have an early start, and it's off to the Dachula Pass, which is one of the higher, it's at 3,100 meters, and it's the start of the highest trek that we're going to be doing on this experience. It's a beautiful trek, and it goes up to, what we call treks in Bhutan, the locals would call pilgrimages. And a lot of these trekking trails are actually old pilgrimage routes that lead to locations of religious significance to the local population. So we're going to be having that opportunity to see all of that as we're going along. And you can see that the trails are largely dotted with a lot of symbolic local traditions. And this is us making a mockery out of one of them. But yes, it's all in good fun as well. And it really is quite this particular trek is quite mystical, because there is a monastery at the very top, but at the bottom there's also these monuments that were built for a war that took place, and so there is this big significance in this location. And when the fog lifts, you can actually see all the 7,000 meter mountains that are in the northwestern part of Bhutan, and it's really something quite spectacular. The trek itself is mild. I wouldn't say it's too intensive. It does take around 3 to 3.5 hours to complete the trek fully. And of course we take breaks as well. So it's not designed. We're not trying to push ourselves or hurt ourselves, but it is a bit of a trek, and we do try to take it slow, especially because we're in the high altitude environment. And you can see here kind of the religious significance of the trek itself. So we're not even at the temples here, but you have these Bhutanese prayer flags that are lining the trail, just so that people can appreciate the religious significance of these locations. And it's something that you can really, you see, but you also feel. And of course, once we get to the very top, you have the spectacular view of the lower and upper Himalayas, right from right by the temple. And these are some of the views that you actually see from the top of this trek that we do from the Dachula Pass. And then of course we go back down and we take a drive over to Punakha. Punakha is where we're going to be spending the night, and Punakha is a far lower altitude environment, so we actually get into a warmer environment, and the surroundings actually start to change. So whereas we were in an alpine environment in Thimbu and Dachula and also Paro, in Punakha you actually start to see things like rice fields, and it starts to feel slightly more tropical. I wouldn't say tropical as such, but slightly more tropical. The rivers are wider, they're more rushing. It's a different look and feel entirely. And this isn't a temple at all. This is one of our accommodations in Punakha. This is where we stay in Punakha, and so you can imagine like everything about this place, even the airport. Even the airport on our last trip, I struggled to get people off the tarmac and into the into the building, because it just looks like a temple. Everything looks so so beautiful and so local, and that's quite unique to Bhutan. So during our time in Punakha, we're going to be doing a trail around the rice fields, and which also leads to an impressive temple here at the very top. And we'll have the opportunity to go inside. We have with us, of course, a local Bhutanese guide who will explain the different significances of the different places that we're in. And for those of us who are interested in actually trying to practice some of these things, we'd also have that opportunity. And then what we'll do is we actually go inside the temple, and you can go all the way to the top, and there's a spectacular view from the top over there. This is a short hike. On our time in Punakha, we actually have a series of 3 short hikes, which is a little bit different from what we were doing in the Duchula, where it was one big hike. So the 3 short hikes are, there's one up to here. And then we have another hike in which we visit the Punakha Zong, which is the most spectacular Zong. A Zong is a fortress, and here the fortress has religious significance as well, because it's a fortress against evil spirits. So we'll have the opportunity to go inside the Zong, get a tour, visit the monastery inside the Zong. It's really something quite spectacular. And then after that, we'll have the opportunity as well to go and visit, to do another trek, the 3rd trek of the day, and go and visit the fertility temple, which is also quite fun. And it's a very interesting, and I think it's a little bit culturally unusual for those of us from a kind of a Western tradition, if you like, where there are certain things that might feel a little bit out of place, but over there it's really interesting to kind of see their point of view on these things, and that's all part of the trekking. And then lunch, of course, on this day is going to be right by the river overlooking the Punakha Zong. So it's something really special. Right. So that evening is spent in Punakha, and then at the end of that, we're going to do a drive over back to Duchula Pass, and then onwards all the way back to Paro. So it's quite a bit of a drive. But the good thing about being in Paro is that we spend 2 nights there, so you don't have to pack and unpack again. And this actually leads to the highlight of the trip, which is the trek to the Tiger's Nest, which is that famous temple pitched on the side of the mountain that everybody is very familiar with. On this day, we get to practice actually quite a few things. So the trail itself is broken up into 3 parts. The first part can be done by horseback, and some of us can do that, and that's of course included. But for those of us who would rather walk, and some of us do feel like walking, we can also do it walking. And the horses aren't particularly fast, so we can walk and ride simultaneously. And so we go up through the forest until we finally reach a point where the horses can no longer go, and that's where we start to walk. And the walking section is broken up into 2 parts. You've got the initial section, which leads us to our lunch spot, and then you have the last final bit of an ascent that goes up through these stairs that reach to the Tiger's Nest at the very top. And this is actually just before Tiger's Nest. Afshan is striking a pose with a beautiful background. So you can imagine the kind of backdrop that you have against where it is that we're going. And of course, there you have the Tiger's Nest pitched right on the edge of the mountain. Once we go into the Tiger's Nest, again, there's no photography is allowed in there. So when we're inside, we'll have the opportunity to go to the different rooms inside there, hear an explanation about the temple. For those of us who feel a particular religious, bond to this place, can have the opportunity to meditate. We don't want to push anybody. At the end of the day, this is all about having an adventure holiday. We don't want to kind of push people to hurry up and whatever. On this particular day, it's all about this place. So, but when we get there, and it does take us some time to get there, a few hours actually, once we're there, we'd like to take our time and just enjoy the space that we're in as much as possible. And then after we've had that opportunity, we'll head back down. We'll have our lunch at the lunch spot before continuing the trek all the way back down. It's not possible to take the horses at that point. Horses can only be used for going up. It's better not to use them for going down because they can slide. And then after that, we go to to the what we call the farm, and in the farm we have a number of interesting activities. One of them is we get to try out Bhutanese archery, which is the local sport in Bhutan. So the national sport of Bhutan is archery, and they take it very seriously. So we'll actually have an opportunity to learn from a Bhutanese archer how to fire a bow and arrow. But we also have two other things that are going on at the farm. One of them is a hot stone bath. So we're each going to have our own hot stone bath, and which is basically they cook these stones. They take them out of the river, they cook them over a barbecue, and then they put them in a hot tub, which you sit in. It's your own, but there's a space of, obviously there's like a barrier between you and the stone so you don't burn your feet. And you sit inside this hot tub and you absorb all the minerals. It's something really, really spectacular. And then we have a festival dinner with some dancing and some local tradition, and then spend the night. And the following day, in the morning, we fly back to Kathmandu. Of course, it isn't over in Kathmandu because we don't stay in Kathmandu. We have 2 more nights on this trip, and we go straight from Kathmandu to a nearby area that overlooks the Himalayas, and it's also possible to see the Everest from where we go. It's in the foothills surrounding Kathmandu. It's also quite spectacular. And over there, we're going to be doing a combination of trekking and yoga. And actually, we're going to merge these 2 things together. So at first, we'll be doing just a little bit of yoga to unwind. We're going to be staying in one hotel the entire time, so there's no need for packing and unpacking. Like I said, this is an adventure holiday, so it's going to be quite relaxed. We're going to start with some learning some meditative techniques and yoga techniques before going out and trekking and actually practicing them out in nature. So it's something that's really, really great. And actually, one of our biggest treks on this experience takes place when we're actually back in Nepal doing one of these yoga treks, which is actually quite something spectacular. And what you can't see in this picture is that facing everybody is a deep valley and then the high Himalayas, and you can even see Everest, which is great. And what I like particularly about this trip is that you get the combination of the 2. So you have the very strict order of Bhutan, and then the very different kind of energy of Nepal. Both of them are extremely immersive, but they couldn't be further from each other. And you get to try out the 2 of them. Both of them are super high, vibrations are pretty crazy, but they manifest in 2 very different ways. And I think that's one of the things that I love most about this trip in particular. On our very last night, so after our last night together, where we do a kind of a celebration dinner, the next day we will shuttle everybody back to Kathmandu. For those of us who have early flights, you'll go straight to the airport. For those of us who are, we're going to be, we have later flights, or we're going to be spending a little bit more time in Kathmandu, it's possible for us to pick up the city tour where we left off on the first day, and we can do a little bit of that, and for anybody who's missed out on stuff that they didn't get to see. And then that's it. That's pretty much the trip in a nutshell. So before I jump into your questions, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what is probably what differentiates this trip from others. It is a combination of trekking, but it's also hugely culturally immersive. So in the different, because there isn't one like final endpoint objective, like if you were doing, let's say, Kilimanjaro or Machu Picchu or something like that. These are mostly treks in which we go and we do the trek and then we come back. We've merged it with a strong cultural element to really immerse ourselves in the local experience. And we've been doing this for a few years now. So what we learned was that people get the most out of this experience when we couple, trekking to Tiger's Nest with the hot stone bath, or trekking, to Punakha with visiting the fertility temple, or trekking in Nepal, because we're in the lower Himalayas, with the yoga experience and the meditation, which really helps you understand what it is that these places mean to the locals, and that's quite great. In terms of what requirements people have to join this. This is a kind of a great trip for people who want to take their first steps out there. Not exclusively for that, by all means. There are so many people who been trekking all over the world who want to go to Bhutan and have that experience because Bhutan is spectacular. But what I mean is that from a physical perspective, it's what we would call a mild adventure holiday. So at no point will you feel like we're trying to push too hard. Of course, everybody comes at their own level, and some people will find things a little bit more challenging than others, but it will always feel quite doable, and there is always a possibility to exit, and get back within a short period of time if that was ever necessary. So with having said that, I would say this is pretty much my introduction to this experience. And I'm happy to take your questions. So please do feel free to drop them into the chat room, and I'll be happy to do that. You could do that by writing them directly in the chat, or private messaging them to myself or to Eli, who is marked as host on this chat group. Got a question about meals. So meals are covered throughout the entire trip. The meals are where it's possible. You're always going to have options. So when we're in Nepal on the first night, and when we're in Nepal for our hotel stay in Nepal, the dinner is on the first night is a la carte, and then for the other nights in Nepal, it's a buffet. So you have a lot of options. You've got vegetarian options, you've got vegan options, you have meat options. It's all available to you. In Bhutan, it's also a buffet every single meal, but the difference is that in Bhutan, slaughter is forbidden, so there's no meat on the menu. And although there is chicken, it's imported, and I would recommend, although the food is available and it's a buffet, so you can scoop up whatever you like, but I would recommend eat what the locals eat, right? So if it's something that is if it's native to the locals, then you're going to have a lot of good food. Dal and like dalbat, which is wonderful is actually Nepalese. It isn't Bhutanese. So in Nepal, you will always have access to dal and dalbat, which is the meal with dal. Dal is a lentil stew, for those of you who don't know. But in Bhutan, it's actually quite different. So you're going to have it's more greens, it's more earthy, it's more things that are fresh, that are taken from the ground. That's the kind of thing that you're going to be you can expect to be eating, which is actually very refreshing, and I look forward to it as a kind of a detox for myself. Got a question about drinking water. Drinking water is for us throughout the entire trip. We provide you with bottled drinking water. So in Nepal, we use bottled water even for brushing our teeth. We don't use the tap water because it's not safe for that. So we'll always provide you with bottled water throughout. You'll always have access to it. And in Bhutan, it's the same, but in Bhutan, the water for brushing teeth and that's perfectly fine to use. So you at no point will you need to boil water or put iodine tablets or anything like that. We'll be providing you with sealed bottled water throughout. Got another question here, which is, okay, what is the total cost other than arrival and departure flights? So you mean in addition to our trip? Yes, and the dates, fine. So we have 2 dates happening in 2021. We've got 19th to the 26th of March, and 27th of March to the 3rd of April. So day 1 is your arrival day. So if you're coming on the first trip, that means arriving on the 19th of March. And so your flight should fly into Kathmandu on the 19th of March and depart from Kathmandu on the 26th of March at any point during the day. We generally recommend arriving a little bit early and leaving a little bit late, but we're flexible with whatever the situation is. And same thing on the second trip is 27th of March to the 3rd of April, same thing. So arrive on the 27th and depart on the 3rd, both from Kathmandu. There is no additional cost other than flying there and flying out. Everything else, from the moment we pick you up from Kathmandu till the moment we drop you back off at Kathmandu International Airport, you are completely covered. So that means your meals are covered, your transportation is covered, everything that is fees related is covered, everything to do the itinerary is covered, your water is covered, and specified beverages with our meals are of course as well covered. So there's nothing additional. We also, of course, if you'd like to leave a discretionary tip to the local teams, that is up to you. You can ask us for our recommendation, and we include that in the guidebook as a recommendation, but that's a discretionary thing. That's completely up to you, and there's no pressure to do that. So outside of your, to answer your question fully, outside of flight, like your tickets to fly in to Kathmandu and fly out from Kathmandu, everything is taken care of by us, including the flight from Kathmandu to Bhutan and back, and the visas and all associated costs with that. I've got another question here about temperature overall on the trip, which is a very common question. It varies quite dramatically. So like I said, we've got 2 days, three of our days are spent in a region that's close to 3,000 meters. So over there, particularly at night, it can get quite cold. In fact, it can reach to be around 4 to 5 degrees Celsius. And that's, but that's perfectly manageable. And the hotels themselves are very comfortable, and they've got a heating system that's great. And you know, it's not like when we're doing the big treks in the tea houses or at Kilimanjaro tent or anything like that. You'll actually get to turn on the heater and, you know, sit in a t-shirt. But while we're doing the treks, we recommend just looking at our gear guide, which comes in with a guidebook, and just sticking to what we recommend, because we've recommended those items of gear based on our weather experience in Bhutan. When we go to the Punakha side of the Dachula Pass, over there it's going to be quite warm, even at night. So the lowest temperature that we're likely to face at this time of year will be 12 to 15 degrees Celsius at night. Excuse me, and then it can go up to even 25, 28 degrees if we get direct sunlight. So it can be quite warm. On the Nepal part of the experience, you'll find that it's a variation of the two. So at night it's going to be a little bit colder, so I would say closer to 5, 6. But then during the day it's going to be a little bit warmer, so closer to 28, 29. And of course, if there's cloud cover, it will be it'll vary. But I'd say don't worry too much about that. We've covered what needs to be covered in our gear list, and it's there for all eventualities that are possible on this trip. So if you have everything on the gear list, you should be fine no matter what we face. And I got another question about trekking poles and if they're necessary. Look, trekking poles are a necessary piece of gear for anybody who wants to spend time walking in life, because you may not need them right now, but and not for the going up, for going down. So you may not need them, but the damage that you're the micro tears and the micro damage that you're causing to your knees walking down today, now on these trips, will come back to haunt you later on. And so I would recommend, you'll never see somebody who's out, who treks often, not carrying their trekking poles. It has nothing to do with whether it keeps your balance or doesn't keep your balance, or that somebody's better than somebody else because they're not using trekking poles. Absolutely nonsense. The best mountaineers, when they're on the trails, have their trekking poles out to protect their knees, because they want to be doing what they want to do for as long as they possibly can. So that's the answer to that question. Right. Does anybody have any more questions before I wrap up? I hope that. Okay. There's another question. I have a question here, which is: are there porters on this adventure? We do. Okay. So there is on this trip. There is no need for porters, because we're constantly. Basically, the way it's run is that our luggages are going to be transported by car to our hotel every single day. So when we wake up in the morning, we're going to put our stuff into our luggage, and then we have our team over there who's going to help you put them into the van, and then they're going to be ready for us when we arrive at the next hotel. When we're doing the trekking experience in between that, you're actually going to just need to wear your light backpack, no more than 4 to 5 kilos, that contains your water, an extra layer, and a snack to eat, and that's about it. And then after that, you can just so there's no actual need for porters, but we do have a local team of both guides for trekking and as well to experience the cultural side of Bhutan and Nepal, and we also have a guide for our to lead us in our yoga and meditation when we're in Nepal. So that we do have, but there's no need for porters, traditional porters on this particular experience. Does anybody have any more questions? I'll start to wrap up, and if anybody does have anything else, please do drop them in. I'll try to attend. If you are unable to attend this session and you're watching us on our website, or if you have any, you're actually in the session and you have any future questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We absolutely love what it is that we're doing. We love going to Bhutan. We love answering your questions. For us, we're everyone always thanks us on these trips, and we're like, no, thank you, because if it isn't for you, we can't be here, and we love to be here. So it's a pleasure to be sharing this experience with all of you. I'm really looking forward to spring 2021 when we have our trips. I'm going to be sending over an email to everyone. For those of you who are unaware, if you have not yet booked with us, we're currently running a promotion that enables you to book for your deposit for just 100 euros. So 100 euros reserves the place, and then you have nothing more to pay until 8 weeks before the trip. We're also going to be sending you an extra special promo code that even reduces the price of that full package at the end, and we'll be sending you an email after this session is over with a link to this video if you want to rewatch it or share it, and also to have that promo code so that you can use it when you're booking. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. It's my pleasure to be here, and I hope to be sharing this trail with you guys soon in spring 2021. It's just around the corner. You'll be surprised. See you soon.